a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Tamara Scott Show, where we help you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. We do that because if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it somewhere in His Word. So we don't want you to get caught up and all worrisome, and we realized a couple years back, if whoever they are could cause you to be uncertain, could cause you to just have stress and anxiety, maybe even be fearful, that then you're malleable. We don't want that. God has a plan for your life. We bring these headlines to you just so that you know how best to deal with them, best to pray for them, to strategize and stay on track with the plan God has for you. All right, so join me today. We'll get to them right in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them if you want to put the photos up of them as I give their bios, Thomas. The first is Allie Hopper. She's an internationally recognized expert in human trafficking, the president of Guard Against Trafficking, a nonprofit co-founded to combat exploitation through education, advocacy, and legislation. She's testified before the U.S. Congress and Senate, trained law enforcement and policymakers, and interviewed human traffickers who have been incarcerated in the U.S. and abroad. She authored Florida's anti-grooming bill and helped pass semi-laws in multiple states. A frequent voice in national media, Allie continues to shape public awareness, drive forward policies that protect children, and combat trafficking nationwide and worldwide. Joining her is the co-founder of Guard Against Trafficking, Vice President and co-founder Dr. Jared Sandusky. Sandusky is a criminologist specializing in counter-human trafficking, the Vice President of the Guard Against Trafficking, a former federal law enforcement officer with over 20 years experience. He develops and delivers trafficking prevention training across the U.S. and internationally. He's testified before the U.S. Congress and Senate and consults with organizations like Interpol, the Colombian National Police, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organizational Crime. Dr. Sadowski's expertise helps shape policies and equip communities with practical tools to combat trafficking worldwide. How very appropriate for us to bring them both on today with the headlines out of Mexico, the violence, the explosions, the fires, the shootouts on the beach. And we'll be talking about that because I believe they've had feet on the ground as we're talking about the trafficking in Mexico. And my thanks to Dr. Heidi Klesick, who joins us later this week. You remember Heidi has brought us great information on the organ transplanting, organ harvesting, and transplantation that has been concerning, unethical, and unsafe for the patient who is to be the donor in many cases. And it hit when the Commerce Committee went with a hearing on that, and we just happened to have Heidi on the show around that, and then Brandon picked it up as well. And I think on that one, I think we had like 2 million hits in a couple of days because the information was so vital and so timely. So we are thankful that again today, thank you Heidi for connecting us with Allie and Jared, that we'll be able to talk timely again today as we're talking about the violence that's broken out in Mexico over the weekend. Let's bring our guest on. So Dr. Sandusky and Allie Hopper, thank you for joining us today. Thank you both for joining us. Of course, we've got a couple headlines I need to say right away. Our thanks to the Olympian athletes who just gave it their all and had an incredible display over the last couple of weeks. The women's hockey team, and I think I might have sent you, well, it's on the Tamara Scott Show Facebook page, if nothing else. The women's team stood, oh, there you are. There's a drawing right there. That is from Iowa. That's one of our state legislators right there who paints freedom rocks in every county in our state, made that animation for Jack Hughes, who made the winning goal, which was only fitting, if you can see, that tooth was a fresh loss in that game yesterday in that tiebreaker of a goal he did. So that was just wonderful. And then the women's hockey team as well, winning the gold and standing for the anthem. It was great to see two teams celebrate our country, celebrate America. It was just a blessing. So I just needed to say that. And there's so much with that hockey team yesterday, just so much fun about that. It's a very personal game, a lot of relational stories. It's a very tight knit community. I know this because I have a daughter who is the organist for one of the teams. So it's just fun. And she's at a different level than NFL, but it's just fun to be a part of that family. All right, then I'm going to jump the storms that we've had. I won't talk about those here, but a lot of happenings here in our state and now out east. All right, so welcome, Dr. Help me, Sadowski.
Sadowski, correct. Yep. Thank you.
Welcome, glad to have you. And Allie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So I know you've sent me photos. We can start right away with those, or maybe I should start with a video for our viewers who may not have heard what's taken place in the last couple of days. Thomas, let's play one of the videos that kind of just goes through. You can play the one without the volume that just kind of shows the explosions and the violence. There you go. Okay, so this is the funeral procession, I think. And in this funeral procession, then I think the fighting broke out, the shots took place. Let's go ahead and start. Your organization, Guard Against Trafficking. How long ago did you found your organization?
So our organization was founded in 2025. However, Dr. Sadowski and I have been doing the work on the ground, firsthand in person, for a lot longer than that. That work and what we've been able to accomplish is really what prompted the start of the nonprofit organization.
I think that happens in many cases, right? And to me, it's also a concern when somebody starts an organization without really plunging into the work. Then I'm curious what it's about. When you've done the work, you're just trying to get more word out there and possibly even fund your work. All right, a criminologist. That sounds intriguing to me. How did you take that background into what you're doing now?
Ellie, do you want to take that? Or
No, then Jared, go ahead.
Okay. So I did 26 years with the Department of Homeland Security. I retired in May of 2024. And the area that for the last 7 years that I've been working on is human trafficking. Allie and I started working together several years ago. And our approach to human trafficking is a little different. And it's related to our discussion today with cartels, in that we go into prison and we interview cartel members in Central America. And we've interviewed cartel members that have been incarcerated in the United States, Central America, Mexico, and really around the world. And the insights that we've learned about cartel operations is what has led us to testifying before the Congress and Senate a total of 5 times in the last 2 years.
All right. And I don't know if it was from your interview, but CPL Action, another great group we work with out of Minnesota on trafficking, was talking about the fact that when they've talked to these traffickers in prison, many of them shared what they're now teaching in the public schools, what we call comprehensive sex ed, is actually a form of grooming. Allie, I know you were active in helping that bill in Florida get passed to stop grooming. Is that from what you found in your work and your research?
Yeah, it's actually a very small world, Tamara. I didn't realize that you guys were in connection with the CPL organization. I actually used to live in Minnesota and I'm very familiar with their work. They do an excellent job. But really, what we do find is a majority of human trafficking, and specifically sex trafficking, does begin with the grooming process. A majority of that, actually, what we're finding is 60% in the United States actually begins online. So that starts with an online grooming process and then goes from there. But we do find grooming as the most prominent way that men, women, and children find themselves in human trafficking situations.
Absolutely. All right. And when we come back, we're going to put some of those photos you have together. Are the photos we're looking at that we will show shortly in the next segment, are those from Mexico?
They're from various trips, but yes, specifically from the U.S.-Mexico border under the past administration when the border was open. So that was from our travels and our research trips to the border.
Okay. All right. Very good. And Thomas, while we have a minute, let's go ahead and play the very short clip with more of the explosives and the violence that we're seeing.
Vámonos. Vámonos. Vámonos.
This is, I think, a reception of a store, but we're hearing they're in civilian buildings now. This is no longer on just gang territory, in civilian homes. In fact, if you want to go to the link with Marinette Miller Meeks, our congressional member in this district where we have the show, she's giving the warning. I see several other congressional members are warning us to stay out of the area, obviously, but also for Americans to move into emergency type action to get their way to their embassies if they can, or to shelter in place if they cannot. Do you two have any information on that?
Yep, I know in Puerto Vallarta, they've basically seized a lot of the streets, and the cartels, they're ruthless, they're pure evil. We've sat, Allie and I've sat across the desk from actually the same cartel, Jalisco New Generation cartel members in prison, and listening to the stories of organ harvesting, of child trafficking. This particular cartel, CJNG, is probably the most ruthless out of all of them, and certainly the most organized and powerful.
All right, and we will go ahead and go to break here. When we come back, we'll play some of those. We'll show some of those photos that you've sent us, and we can just kind of go through those and your work. And then if you can kind of just explain to our viewers what went down, what started the unrest, and how we're in this place so quickly. And I will say this before we go to break, to everyone who's been frustrated that this administration hasn't arrested people yet, whether it's with Epstein, whether it's with any other issue that we're dealing with, fraud, Somali, all of that. We're all a little anxious and wanting things to happen. But do you wonder if what we're seeing in Mexico gives us what I think we've discussed on this show, getting folks out of our country who shouldn't have been here, criminal aliens deported, gang members deported before making some of those arrests, so something like this may not be such a risk in the United States. Just posing it as a question. We'll be right back. Ali Hopper and Dr. Jared Sadowski, and they are with Guard Against Human Trafficking. We're talking about Mexico, the cartels, the violence, and what we can do to stop it, what we can do to protect ourselves. Stay tuned.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
I need to tell you about our Bella Grace. The slender little sachet has the elixir with the collagen, astaxanthin, and cat's paw. In 2022, got an award for helping with cognitive function, and in 2023 in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. But the best is what we hear from so many of you. You have noticed better joint health, improved mobility, less eye strain and fatigue, helping with computer vision syndrome, visual acuity, depth perception, alleviating dry eyes, but also helping with your immunity, your stress management, endurance, less fatigue overall, not just eye fatigue, muscle recovery, mental clarity, focus, and gut health. Then there's the fun list. The firmer, smoother skin texture, fewer fine lines and wrinkles, improved skin elasticity, decreased age spots, more even skin tone, improved skin hydration, reduced oxidative stress, healthier nails, less cellulite, hair health, better sleep. Who wouldn't want any of those? Call them beauty items if you wish, but who doesn't want to feel a little bit better or more confident when you're going to present in the public square, when you're going to speak at a city council? And who just doesn't want to feel a little healthier? Maybe they're just byproducts of being healthier. More information at tamara.com. tamara.bellagraceglobal.com, tamara.bellagraceglobal.com. All right, we're talking with Allie Hopper, Jared Sadowski. These are co-founders of guardagainsttrafficking.com, been very active in Mexico, understands the cartel that we now see in the media right now with all the violence in Puerto Vallarta. And so to our guests, welcome back, Dr. Sadowski and Allie Hopper. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to, at this point, almost turn it over to you, if you will. You've got photos you sent us, and the producer can just put those on screen, and you can kind of explain those to our viewers, or take us through this. Why you've sat with this gang, you're aware of this gang. I'm sure this is no surprise to you. Let me ask you this. Before I went to the break, I said that this could be why the president has worked so to clear criminal gang members out of our country before making some arrest. Could this be why in America he's trying to prevent some of that here?
You asked a very good question, Tamara. What the American people need to realize is that Jalisco New Generation Cartel, which is this particular cartel, they have an extensive presence here in the United States. They're in over 20 plus cities across the country, and that's on the more conservative end. But I think his prioritization of getting the worst of the worst out has been very smart, because not only does it lower the crime rate, it also lowers the deaths that are attributed to things like fentanyl. We've had a fentanyl crisis where men, women, children, our young people are dying in a extensive amount of numbers, a high amount of deaths attributed to the drug trafficking that is directly part of Jalisco New Generation Cartel's business model. And so focusing on the worst of the worst not only helps protect American citizens from this, but it also makes sure that we eject people out of this country that have no business being here, especially those that exploit our systems, exploit our country, and actually put our citizens in our country at risk. Jared?
Yeah, great point. So to provide some background context on this cartel and on El Mencho and the significance of him being basically taken out. So there was a $15 million reward for his capture prior to yesterday. He started off as a Mexican police officer, went into special forces. He then went into the cartel. He took his training with him. And what he did was he developed this cartel that is by far currently the most organized and most brutal. So when you hear about cartel violence and you hear about communities being taken over by cartels, that's often at the hands of El Mencho. And yesterday, what happened was just extraordinary. Ultimately, it started back in February 20th, where a girlfriend of one of his trusted associates figured out where his hiding spot was, which was a cabin. And ultimately, the police got involved. And then from there on the 21st, she left this cabin, said that he was still back there. And that led to the Mexican Air Force and National Guard to ultimately come up with an operations plan and to go apprehend him. During the raid, there were 25 members of the National Guard that died, and there were several members from El Mencho's group that died. What you're seeing now on television with all of the fires and the chaos, that's all pre-planned. That's all to basically, the reason why you're seeing on the streets is because they're doing it to block the military, and it's part of a coordinated attack on those communities. And for Americans, you mentioned Americans in Mexico, they're in grave danger. There's a lot of talk about the U.S. involvement in this operation. From my understanding, there was intelligence that was shared, but there was no actual American boots on the ground. But America's involvement at all in taking down this global cartel leader puts Americans in Mexico in great danger.
Great explanation. Thank you very much for that. So the girlfriend gave it up, right? Wow, interesting. Now, I was surprised that the police would even go after him. I thought the police kind of gave way to the gangs in Mexico.
Fair point. So There, so it's interesting that he's been on the run for so many years. But what we're seeing under President Trump's leadership is there's now accountability. You look at Maduro from Venezuela; he was apprehended. El Chapo, his son was recently apprehended. El Mayo, which is another cartel leader within the Sinaloa cartel, was recently apprehended. El Mencho's son as well was recently apprehended. So things are changing. And for the cartels, when they were designated as foreign terrorist organizations, that's really what changed things. And I think that put pressure on the Mexican government to act. And I have no doubt that it is President Trump's leadership and the designation as FTOs that led to Mexico being motivated to capture him.
And to your point, excellent point. We've had some folks in here in the and Thomas, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but folks here in the United States who are MAGA supporters, who were all for Trump, a little frustrated because of the things he's doing in other countries, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's these other gang members or actions he's taking outside the country. But again, I think by doing so, he's setting the pace, sending the message, and creating a better safeguard here in our country before he starts clearing some of these gang members.
You mentioned earlier about the ICE going in and basically capturing the worst of the worst and deporting them. That wouldn't have to have had occurred had the border not been open. And I could tell you, and I feel confident speaking for Ali on this, I could tell you that Ali and I have seen more children that were trafficked through the border during the Biden-Harris administration than most people would believe is possible. Hundreds of thousands of kids were brought through that border, and many of which are still missing. It was so ridiculous, and Ali has testified before Congress about this, that the cartels, and this isn't us telling you, this is information coming directly from the cartel members that we've interviewed. When the border was open, they recognized the demand in the United States for children, the demand for children. And they ultimately met that demand by kidnapping these children from Central America, South America, Mexico, bringing them to the border, giving them the name and phone number of who they are to request to be their sponsor, their new guardian in the United States. Under the last administration, which got rid of DNA testing, that child was processed by Border Patrol, placed in the custody of Office of Refugee Resettlement, and was sent out to these sponsors without any meaningful vetting that, and Ali and I have seen this over and over, led to an exponential amount of trafficking. There were 30 incidents that we found of where children were sent to addresses that weren't checked on and turned out to be strip clubs. Not that they're actually working in the strip clubs. That was just what the address was on a piece of paper. And we have come across these kids at the border who, when we've asked, well, you're alone, where are you going? And they've held up a piece of paper saying that the bad man that brought them to the border, referring to the cartel, gave them this piece of paper who they were to request to be their new guardian. And under the last administration, those children were sent blindly to these guardians. And there was one case where Ali and I, we went into Mexico, and we were in a border town, and we sat at in a park at like a picnic table. The cartel member came and sat with us. He asked what our business was in Mexico. We were the only Americans there. And ultimately, we explained that we're humanitarians. We're only here about trying to protect children. And he told us, this cartel member told us, he said, if you look around, every parent is holding the hand of their child. And he asked if we knew why. We said, no. He said, because if not, a motorcycle will pull up, scoop up that child, and that child will be sold in the United States by that afternoon.
Repeat that again. That's our viewers are not, I'm sure that they missed that. Just repeat that again.
Under the last administration, with the border open, children were flowing through the border. Right. There was a report that came out in September of 2024 that said 324,000 children that were in the custody at one point of the previous administration were unaccounted for. So we went into Mexico to figure out what's going on, and we sat at a picnic table in a park in a small town on the border. A cartel member sat with us, uninvited, sat at our table, asked what our business was in Mexico. We explained that we're humanitarians. And he told us, he said that the demand for children in the United States is so high that if you look around, every parent is holding the hand of their child, because if not, a motorcycle will pull up, scoop up that child, and that child will be sold in the United States by that afternoon.
That is so frightening. And yet so absolutely believable. When I think it was still Obama in office, we were warning then because they were allowing kids to come through. Remember, unaccompanied minors weren't going to be stopped. If you had a child with you, you weren't going to be stopped at the border any longer. We warned then you were making those children a commodity even more than they already were for trafficking. Now they're going to be mules used to get people across the border, whether they're relation or not. And until Trump came in and started doing the DNA testing, there was no way to know. The left protested over that. They protested over the supposed cages, which was just separating these kids from older people, illegal immigrants who could harm them. Heard protesting over that, but we never saw protest over these 300,000 plus missing children that were trafficked. Thank you two for bringing this up. Thank you for making this aware. 2 minutes left before we go to break.
Okay. So real quick, Allie and I sat one afternoon with a Border Patrol agent, and we looked into his eyes, and his eyes became filled with tears. And he explained to us that while working as a Border Patrol agent, he came across a child that was dirty, was injured, and was with two people that were clearly not his parents. And under the previous administration's policies, the child, because he had injuries, was taken to the hospital. The doctor informed the Border Patrol that this child had been sexually assaulted. But under the last administration's policies, this Border Patrol agent had no choice but to hand this child back to his abusers, knowing that they weren't his real parents. But because DNA testing had been erased, and they weren't permitted to properly vet guardians, that child went in the custody of the people that were hurting that child.
To every viewer out there, this has to anger you. It should anger you into action. Our churches should be talking about this. Our schools should be talking about this. And certainly we should be talking about it at every level of government because it impacts all of us. We've got to go to our break. We're talking with Trafficking. We'll be right back talking more about Mexico, the cartels, the information they have, how it's impacting us here in America, and what we possibly can do about it. And we will show you some of those photos we mentioned earlier as well. Stay tuned.
Do you like drinking toxins that could cause cancer, inflammation, and all kinds of other autoimmune diseases? Of course you don't. Well, much of our water in America is full of toxins. That's a proven fact. WorldviewWater.net. WorldviewWater.net is your solution so that you can drink good, clean water. In fact, I give it to all my 3 fur babies, all my 3 dogs. I have one under my kitchen sink, one of these filters, as well as on my shower. WorldviewWater.net.
This is our new NutraSwish, Numi NutraSwish. You can find more information at Numi, neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS, one of the products we offer because you all have different preferences and respond differently to different items. So this is our lavender. It's for ladies anywhere along your journey. No hormones in it, but if you're taking a hormonal supplement, you might want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anyone over the age of 18. It has glutathione, which is a antioxidant, helps with over 400 cellular functions, and it helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, one of those terms we learned after 2020, and it helps detox glyphosate. The good glutathione helps detox glyphosate. Glyphosate is found in ag chemicals or lawn chemicals, and some are very concerned about possible links to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. But the blue bottle, the glutathione, helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. Then there's the mango-colored bottle you see on your screen. Numi Neuro helps with your mind, your memory, and your focus. Now, again, after 2020, we heard something about brain fog, a term we'd not heard before. Whether it's from a virus or a vaccine, many have found relief, a little help, with Numi Neuro, the mango-colored bottle. When used with the blue bottle, it is so positive that the American Brain Council wrote about it and it looked like an endorsement. Though we're told they don't write endorsements, it was simply a positive review of what they saw. You can find more information at Numi, neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS for the Tamara Scott Show. Why? Because we want you feeling your best. And when you use that TTSS link, you help us be our best. Talking with Dr. Jared Sadelsky. He is the co-founder and the vice president of Guard Against Trafficking, and Ali Hopper, who is the co-founder and president of Guard Against Trafficking. All right, friends, I'm going to turn it right back to you as well. I see that you're also partnering with our friend Basil Baz from ARC, Association for the Recovery of Children. Worked with Baz, since 2006. He and I would both be speaking at the same trafficking conferences. So kind of have worked with him, and he's been a great guest for us all these years. So thank you for that partnership. Some other good partnerships there as well. But I'm just going to turn it back over to you, whether you want to go through the photos or whether you have more. You have more information than I know to possibly ask. So I want to get what you want to our viewers.
Yeah, I think that it's helpful to review the photos that were provided because those are actually photos that we took when we were on the border. They're photos of unaccompanied alien children. That's Jared right there with 3 children. Jared, did you want to share that interaction?
Yeah. So on one particular research trip, we had 3 children that had came over the mountain from Mexico, and they were dirty, they were scared, they were alone. The youngest one was probably 6 or 7 years old. And it was just a haunting reminder of how these cartels leave these children on their own. And in this particular case, the child, that she was wearing a pink jacket, when we asked, well, where are you going? She pulled out this piece of paper from her pocket and said that the bad man that brought her there told her to request for this to be her new, she had a different name, but guardian sponsor. And it was a real-time example of how these children were being trafficked by the cartels. There was another incident where Allie and I were on the border, and we came across a lady who had been left to die because she became injured. And the cartel left her there to die with her 6-year-old son. She was on
Hang
the
on,
U.S.
Jared, there's actually a photo of that, Tamara. One of the photos there, it's you
Is she
see
sitting on
a
the
woman.
ground?
Yeah, it's like you got a sunset. Like, yep. Go ahead, Jared.
Yep. In this particular case, we located this mother from Colombia with her 6-year-old son, left there to die by the cartel because she had hurt her ankle and could no longer walk. Ultimately, Allie carried the child. I carried the mother. We brought her to where there was an opening in the woods to where Border Patrol would respond and provide the medical attention she needed. But this is another example of how truly careless the cartels are in terms of what happens to people.
Careless.
Yeah, and Tamara, oops, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Just careless and malicious, just cold.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Stephen Miller today went on X and issued a statement that no one gets to the U.S. without the cartels assisting in their smuggling or trafficking process. And that's exactly right. That is what Jared and I have testified to numerous times, that no one gets through these areas to the border and into the United States without the assistance of the cartel.
So if they're coming legally, is that the same case? They still have to go through these cartels even if they're coming legally?
Now, legally is a different story. It depends on, I guess, which legal process or legal channel that they're coming in through. H-1Bs and some of the other visa processes have been challenged because of the ways in which that they get these visas. But we're more talking about the illegal immigration problem, and mainly under the last administration when the border was open. The border being open created a human trafficking pipeline for these cartels to exploit human beings and their desire to get to the United States and seek a better life. And they ended up exploiting these individuals and their desperation. And so not only did they have to pay a fee, oftentimes they would charge them an exorbitant amount of fees along the way, thus incurring more debt and then being tied to debt bondage and being unable to repay that debt. And many of these families, these men, these women, these children, if they were unable to pay this debt, they were sexually exploited, they were assaulted. Many didn't survive the trip, and the ones that did knew that they owed a debt to the cartel, and once they got to the United States, they were immediately put to work to pay off that debt.
And if I can add on to that, so one of the research trips that we went on, we had the opportunity, and this was at the height of the Biden Harris regime, and it was unprecedented. It was a time of unprecedented trafficking through the border. And we went into a shelter, a migrant shelter. The shelter, it held about 200 people, of which about 50 were children. And we were being given a tour of this migrant shelter, and it was in Texas. It was on the U.S. side, and these migrants had been processed by Border Patrol, which migrants referred to at that time as migrant Uber, and given a court date under the last administration, 4 to 7 years in the future, and released. If they have money, then they go to their family. If not, they go to these shelters. So we're in the shelter, and we asked, can we go inside and talk to them? And they let us talk to the migrants. Every single migrant that we'd spoken to was exploited in some horrific way. In one particular case was a mother who refused to let her child out of her arms. Hours went by where she continued to hold this child. And when asked, your child's safe, you're in the United States, why not let your child down? She explained that the cartel stole not only all of her belongings, but the other two children she started the voyage with because she had no money for bribes. The answer to the question of why the cartels want children is because they are selling them in the United States.
Yep. And they sell them several times over. Unlike drugs, which are a one-time purchase, they can traffic these kids over and over. And thankfully, Tara Rhodes, DHS whistleblower, helped bring some of that to light as well. All right. Do you want to go through some of those other photos, or where would you like to go next?
I just want to touch on before we hit on some of the photos. So one of the testimonies was in July of 2025. And so when we were talking about the unaccompanied alien children program, what Americans need to realize is their taxpayer dollars were used in the transportation of these children. And so this impacts not only the every single American citizen, but this is what your tax dollars were going towards. The NGOs that were facilitating this, the waste, fraud, and abuse that went into those organizations, all on the backs of hardworking taxpayers, just to go towards the transportation and further exploitation of these children. And one of the things that actually President Trump ended up retruthing on Truth Social a couple weeks ago was a communication or a line of questioning that me and Congressman Higgins were having, and we were discussing the Notice of Concern hotline. And that Notice of Concern hotline was established under the ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement agency, and it had to do with the unaccompanied alien children program, that if there were any calls or concerns, that was the hotline that you could make a call to. Between August of 2023, Jared, 2023 to the inauguration, there were over 65,000 unanswered calls. These were calls spanning from calls about stale bread all the way to a child making a phone call saying that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. So these were the calls, the cries, the pleas for help that went unanswered under the past administration. So this administration actually took the time and went back through those phone calls, actually identified that there were 65,000 unanswered calls, went through each one of them and tried to track down some of these children, and they were successful in rescuing some of these children. But these are the atrocities that the American people need to realize, especially since their taxpayer dollars were used and abused in these circumstances.
So for all of those of you who have friends over the water cooler at work, or those liberals that sit in the pews and want to pretend that the Christian thing to do would be to open those borders wide, we have told you for years that when you don't entice someone to sin, to put their family in danger under the excuse that you're going to love them as a Christian or present the gospel. We have people across the cities of America we can present the gospel to, but it is not Christian to entice someone to sin, to put their children in danger, to put children in harm's way. That is not Christian in any way. The Christian way would have been to obey the law. And of course, we have the wise welcome with Kelly Kohlberg talking about the biblical pathway to immigration and the welcome there. All right, let's see, we've got 3 minutes before we go to break. Do you want to put more photos in before we go? Do we just pop some up? I think we have more from Mexico. Let's pop some of the other photos up that are on the ground working, Thomas. There. Okay, this is your prison work.
It is. So Allie and I lead a prison ministry to a prison in Central America that's actually Allie speaking to about 30 inmates, of which every one of them are gang members and some have affiliations with the cartels. But in prison, none of that matters. In prison, we have seen through faith-based principles, we have seen so many lives changed through this prison. That's why we lead the prison ministry, is because it's working. It's truly helping to reform and rehabilitate many of these inmates. And in fact, Allie and I were in the prison several weeks ago. We had a room of about 200. Every one of them would have been gang members, but inmates. And Allie, I spent time speaking about how to be a father while you're incarcerated. And Allie, if you could expand on what you talked about in terms of mentoring them to be the man God meant them to be.
Yeah, so what Jared touched on was the prison that we go to has a very faith-based ministry in mind when they're rehabilitating a lot of the inmates. And so the reoffending rate is actually extremely low in comparison to prisons across the world. And so there have been many individuals that have conducted studies on this prison and how they're able to maintain such a low reoffending rate. And it really is through the faith-based principles that this prison establishes. But when we were speaking, like Jared had mentioned, he spoke about how to be a father when you're incarcerated. And I was like, well, what am I going to speak about? I can't speak about being a father when you're incarcerated. So I spoke from the perspective of a Christian woman and what kind of man, what kind of principles, values, morals that a good Christian woman would want to see in a strong Christian man. And so that was what I was trying to relay to them, was how to become the kind of man that would attract or bring in or have a Christian woman want to be with.
Just being a man of integrity. And I would guess several of them probably did not get that teaching, which is one of the reasons why they may be there. Angola prison years ago under Bobby Jindal governorship, they had Burl Cain, the officer, I can't think of what his name was, but he was in charge of the prison, warden, and he brought in the Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or the Baton Rouge Seminary. And I'm telling you, I walked through that prison, and I would have felt safe with any of those inmates in my car. They were believers. They were happy. They were joyful. They prayed over that governor. It was amazing to see. And I actually said to one of them, you are not depressed. You're not bitter. You're not. I have people who are well-to-do, influential, and beautiful homes, travel the world, and they're bitter. They're on anxiety meds. They're on antidepressants. And he said, my eyes are on my freedom. My eyes are on Jesus Christ. And Bobby Jindal prayed over them and said, one day you will not be inmates. You will be free in the presence of a holy God. And it was just, wow, to witness that was so amazing. So thank you for that work that you're doing. That's incredible. That's eternal. Thank you for that. We've got to go to our next break. When we come back, I'm going to pop up some of those pictures of you in DC as well. And we'll be right back with guardagainsttrafficking.org.
Like my nose is
What
itching.
if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
Thomas, can you put up the footage of the shootout on the beach? And then we're going to go right to those photos in DC, unless Allie or Jared want to go with another photo. But play that quick video on the beach. All right, this is what happens when you don't take care of those who mean violence, when you don't keep law and order. Minnesota was bad enough just these last couple of months and weeks, but if you don't tackle it, the president was right to send in guards. He was right to send in those who would uphold the law and to get rid of those who want to bring destruction upon this country. It's not that it's total destruction they want to bring upon this country, harm to our children, no respect for our women. All right, Jared, Allie, I've promised the pictures in DC. Should we go to those, or anything else you want to show before we do? We have 8 minutes in this segment.
No, that's fine.
All right, let's go to the DC photos and just kind of scroll through them if we can, Thomas. All right. One, you look beautiful. There you are. There's a lot of walking when you go to the street, but there you are. Explain to our viewers what the day is.
So that day was actually the July 2025 hearing that I had mentioned earlier, and that hearing was scheduled for 3 hours. It actually went 7 hours because unfortunately that committee was focused on discussing the unaccompanied alien children program, and like I had mentioned, the nonprofit organizations that were involved in the unaccompanied alien children program. And the left did not want to discuss the missing, unaccounted for, and exploited children. They kept distracting and diverting to Epstein, and Jared and I kept looking at each other saying, you know, that's fine, have a hearing on that, but that's not what the purpose of this hearing is. The purpose of this hearing is to discuss the over 350,000 children that have gone unaccounted for. And so really it's doing a disservice to these children, to the American people, and to the public that deserve answers for why these children went missing and why there's 65,000 calls that went unanswered, and why cartel, you know, the infiltration of cartels in our country was exploding, and why they were able to profit so much on the backs of taxpayers and by using children to make their money.
And I think we just showed a picture of you, I believe, in that testimony, in that hearing. I think we probably have one of Jared as well. There you go. Did you all find where people, you mentioned they're trying to grandstand, were there certain ones who were particularly hostile to you?
There were, and it was really unfortunate because it was an opportunity to show the American people a sense of unity in the concern, the joint concern over children. The fact that any other issue could be divisive, but this one, the fact that we all care about children, or, you know, that's what allegedly is described up on Capitol Hill, that we all care about the health, well-being of children, not just in this country, but across the world. But the fact that we couldn't unify and unite under this issue and really just show concern for the missing, exploited, and unaccounted for children was really disheartening, because it was an opportunity that was missed. And but there were lawmakers that really took this issue seriously. They took it to heart. And there were many congressmen and women that showed genuine concern over this issue. Congressman Higgins, Congressman, what was the other one, Jared? I'm blanking.
Congressman Higgins has been one of our biggest supporters, but there have been others, you know. But to answer your question as well, you know, it is unfortunate that people make the trafficking of children a political issue, and if it doesn't align with their party, then they don't even listen to the message. And it was a bizarre experience, the 5 times that we've done this, in terms of it's very clear which congressmen aren't even listening. They're tuned out. When it's their turn to talk, they talk about things such as floods in Texas, not even related to the hearing. And that was disheartening to see. But there were others that definitely have a heart for this. And on the Senate side, Senator Grassley is one that has really been a champion of this. And I just wanted to go back also a second as we talk about cartels. Our colleague and friend Jason Jones is an expert on cartels, and we'd reached out to him whenever the story broke yesterday. And he had provided some insights into what's coming next. Allie, do you want to touch on that?
No, go ahead, take that one.
Sure. So ultimately, there's going to be a power vacuum. And according to Jason, it basically the next person in line is basically that's why you're seeing all of the brutality and the violence, because they're fighting for who's going to take charge next. And we spoke to a former Sinaloa cartel member last night who explained it to us that what you're seeing on television in terms of the cartel violence, the fires, the shootings, all of that is basically the cartel's way of creating an inauguration for the next leader of CJNG.
Yeah,
All right.
and the congressman that I wanted to highlight was Congressman Crane. It had escaped me, but Congressman Higgins, Congressman Crane, he was the one that asked about the notice of concern hotline. His office has been amazing to work with as well. And so there are congressmen and women that show genuine concern over this issue. And it's not, like Jared mentioned, it's not politically charged, it's not politically motivated. It is over genuine frustration that children were harmed as a result of bad policy and the lack of being able to enforce current policy. And so these are the things we need to keep in mind as we head into the midterms, as we head into other elections. Which congressmen and women, which senators, which lawmakers are really representing the well-being of their constituents and of the American people, and which ones are just looking to divide, looking to fundraise on this issue and then do nothing about it, and which ones are being divisive in their communication and how they present the messaging. And really, it comes down to how we saw the ICE operations in Minneapolis, how we saw what happened in Minnesota. There was such a strong messaging and fear propaganda that was injected into what those operations were. And you didn't see any lawmakers come out and say, we're so happy that over 3,300 unaccompanied children were actually located in Minnesota. These are the headlines that need to unite and unify our lawmakers and the American people. And these are the headlines that get overlooked when we're, like I said, injecting fear propaganda into the American people.
Over 3,000 kids that were found, missing kids, immigrant kids, and over 4,000, I think, hardened criminals, rapists, murderers that were removed. So those are the good news. And again, as we remind you, viewers, when we're talking about these congressional members and Senate members, Senator Grassley is my senator, and so I'm so honored to hear that. I'm not surprised one bit, and a friend as well. But to you out there, if your congressional members are not talking about this, call them. 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. We tell you to always have that number. It's the DC switchboard. Gets to any of them, call them at their home offices, because this may not just be on their radar. There's so many bills that come before them. You would think it would be, but they might be focusing on other things. Do what you can to help get this. And then I remind you, there were no protests for those missing kids. The same people who are fussing about the Epstein files and the crimes, as we should, that were against children, we also could apply here, and you heard nothing, but you heard protest against the very National Guard members who were, and ICE members who were taking away those who were the perpetrators of many of those crimes. Think that through. All right, closing words. We've got to run, but 30 seconds each.
Okay, so you brought up a very valid point, Tamara, and I wanted to highlight that and push it one step further. So that is the DC or the Capitol Hill hotline for all of our lawmakers there. But every lawmaker, every representative should be behind this, and that's local, that's state, and that's federal. talk to your local sheriff, talk to your county commission, talk to your school board, talk to your state representatives, because all of them have a hand in this and the ability to move the needle forward in a positive way. There were children that were sent to every single city, every single state across this country, and there's trafficking that goes on in all of these cities and states across this country. So if we really want to make a meaningful difference, it needs to start at the local level. Local action equals national impact. And if every single citizen made sure that their communities did what they should be doing to protect children, whether they're American children or they're children from another country, then we would see a complete difference in the way that our country is moving. But we can't expect those on Capitol Hill to do everything. We also have to pick up the mantle and make this our fight too. This battlefield is not nearly as crowded as it should be with all of the people that have the ability to help. So thank you.
Well said. Jared, can you add to that quickly?
It's going to be tough to follow, but also I wanted to add that this work that Allie and I are doing, it's saving lives. It's saving the lives of children. But as a nonprofit, financial support is the lifeblood that enables us to continue to do this work. So anyone in your audience that is interested in supporting us financially, we're tax deductible 501c3. They can go to guardagainsttrafficking.org, and they can certainly donate to the organization there, which every dollar then gets pushed out to support our work and our mission.
Guardagainsttrafficking.org. I thank you both for coming on with me today. What a gift, what a blessing to our viewers. And to everyone out there, this is something you do need to be working on. The violence that we showed in Mexico, you nip it by preventing it here in America and taking away their cash transactions over our children and harming our children without consequence. This is how we stop it. My thanks to both Dr. Sadowski and Allie Hopper. Hope to have them back again. As we tell you, live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, be encouraged, and never be complacent.